Welcome back to this Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Now, Nigerian issues. President Buhari on Thursday declared June 12 as the new Democracy Day, replacing May 29. He also conferred on the presumed winner, well, some people insist it's not presumed, winner of the June 12, 1993 election, Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola, the highest honor in Nigeria, Grand Commander of the Order of the Federal Republic, GCFR. Now, there have been many fallouts after that, a lot of debate about the politics of it, the legality of it. Friday, June 8th, also marked the 20th year of Sani Abacha's death. But let's start first with the June 12th declaration, which has been very controversial. Let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun, who is now joining us in this discussion. Yemi, what's the take from the civil society?
For the most part, I think everyone is quite excited. I mean, it's a 25-year-old journey, agitation, and lots of criticisms, as you've alluded to. But I think it's about time. And as a friend of mine who's been sort of championing that we need to start a truth and reconciliation process as a country, I think if there's anything that's a good step in that direction, I think that definitely is.
Wait, Yemi, you are a lawyer, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay, not a practicing lawyer.
But didn't go to school for law either.
Okay, I am. But one of the big issues here has been one of legality,
yes,
and morality and politics. Okay, and I'm going to throw it back at you because the civil society has been looking at it. And they're saying what has been done is illegal. Former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Alpha Begore, who had also served as chairman of the National Honors Committee, says it's patently illegal. Why? Because he says you cannot give national honor to a dead person. But some other commentators have been saying, we don't care, just give this honor, you know, because it accords with, it aligns with our own expectations. What's your take? Should somebody go to court to test the National Honors Act? And if that happens, should the award be, you know, withdrawn?
Well, starting point, I think Mr. Belgore made the statement and referred, yes, he didn't actually refer to any section of the act to support his claim, but what he seems to...
No, the analysts have read...
No, that's what I'm trying to say. What he has implied is that because the act says you must receive it in person.
Yeah.
So because of that, yes, from 2, that you must receive it in person, that therefore you cannot be dead to get a national honor. But then section 3, subsection 3 also says that the president has the discretion to do away with it.
Lawyers have become lawyers.
To do away with it. And another group have also said, well, supporting Mr. Belgore basically says what was a person, who is a person that can get an award. And there's basically a lot of cases that define a person basically as a living person. So if you are honoring a person, regardless of what the other sections might say, that we're bestowing a national honor on a person, the person has to be living. I think really... And there was also a reference to another act that we have that mentions the fact that talks about posthumous awards. So if anything, then they should go to the National Assembly, amend the act so is clear. But I think there's enough within the act that allows the president, my personal opinion, I'm not a lawyer, to give the honor. And it is the morality, the politics of it, and I definitely wanted to touch on that. Yes, there have been some criticism that it's political. He's been there for 3 years, but as Student said on this platform yesterday that she is unrepentantly grateful. So regardless of the timing or the political undertones that might be there, justice has been made right. And so take it at that face value. You can debate Buhari on when timing or not, but
okay. I'll still stay with you. Sure. Are you saying more or less that politics is more important than law? That where the politics is right, we can bend the law. Is that what you're saying?
No, they're 2 separate issues. So the issue is around the timing. That's what the politics come into it. So if the timing of giving it now, he could have done it first day he became president in 2015, so that in 2016, June 12 would have been our Democracy Day. But the timing is what people say is political. The legal bit of it, since I'm not a lawyer, but both sides have argued for and against. So as you said, it's either the presidency preempts that, get their own legal opinion. Because actually, before I forget as well, when President Jonathan gave national honors, he was challenged for not honoring Stella Adadipo, who had given her life for Nigeria in the Ebola crisis. And the response that the presidency gave, maybe you can speak to that, at that time was that you do not give awards to a dead person. And that's why she was not so honored. So there is sort of that under Jonathan, this under Buhari. So
and at that time, Justice Alpha Begore was chairman of the National Honors Committee.
Exactly. So that would then lend credence to what he said. But I think it is important, even if it's for other Nigerians like Estella Dadevo. I mean, I think it was Pastor Tunde Bakare who says, if you can't honor your heroes, even though they are dead, then what then does a national honor really mean if you have to be alive to receive it?
Okay, I come to you, Tereba.
Yeah.
What do you make of all this? You know, because politically, people are saying, oh, this is right, Abiola should have been honored since 1999, and June 12 should never have been. But now people are bringing up issues of morality. They are talking about opportunism, and they are talking about legality. What do you make of it?
Well, first, to join majority of Nigerians in saying that it's a welcome development that the late MKO deserved, to be recognized and honored, and that it's also appropriate to move the Democracy Day from May 29 to now. So it's welcome to June 12. So on June 12, we stand. As it were, as about the timing. If it's something that it is right to do, you should always do the right thing. You can't say that because it had not been done, I didn't do the right thing in the past, therefore I will not do it today. Although people suspect, that coming a few quarters to the next election, they read some opportunism into it. But what else is politics about?
Yeah, but on this point of opportunism,
yes.
I mean, see, President Buhari again has said the police should investigate the killing of late Chief Bola Ige, late Dikibo, late Marshal Hari. And people are saying, look, all of this is just politics. And an attempt by the presidency to get back at some of his most vocal critics. Excuse me?
I say,
former President Olusegun Obasanjo is your good friend.
Well, I mean, again, it is right that the nation gets to the root of those killings.
Yeah, but there was the Okuta panel,
which
had already. I mean, what are they going to? What are they going?
Was killed.
What are they going to
after
do?
Okuta? Not
no, but there are issues
after Okuta panel.
But there were issues they are also talking about that fall into the framework of Okuta panel. So what are they going to look at next? Odi killings?
Well, let the government come out and say what's on their list. But if it's about resolving murder cases that previous administrations had muddled up, it's in the interest of Nigeria that we get to know the truth, that justice, be done. It doesn't matter whose ox is God, okay? Although it will seem that all of these, particularly the probe, should have been done sooner than now. But out of respect, for the persons who headed the previous regimes, there had been some restraint. But now that those persons came attacking, it will seem, that it's just to let,
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Prof, beyond the controversy, the political, the legal, the moral,
balance.
I'd like you to comment a little on the significance on June 12 and of MKO Abiola in Nigerian history.
I think MKO Abiola is the first Nigerian president we never had.
Not Awolowo.
Awolowo was never elected.
Fair enough.
MKO Abiola was actually elected on the basis of an unprecedented electoral method, option A4. An unprecedented election in which we had a Muslim ticket. An unprecedented election in which we had him and Bashir Tofa in a national debate for the first time in Nigeria's political history, where issues, constituted the fundamental basis for determining who to vote for. And at the end of the day, the first time we now had a debate, an intellectual debate on quote and unquote election annulment, election result annulment, both of which I do not agree with. There's nothing like election annulment because the election was actually a fait accompli. You can't annul what actually took place. Then election result annulment is the same argument. Because the result was there, the election officers were already announcing. Even some evening newspapers had already published part of the results. So you cannot really annul what existed. Now, what had been annulled is what we can say the announcement, all right, of such elections. Now, in terms of importance, to answer your question now directly, you now discover that MKO Abiola, all right, is, I wouldn't say was, since his legacy is still there, has become an epitome, the foundation, the crystal foundation for democracy making in Nigeria. And the award, if you quickly permit, you see, it is legally political and politically legal. The issue is that Belgore is quite right because he referred to the 1963 National Honors Act.
1964.
1964.
National Honors Act number 5, 1964.
1964, he referred to that. Now, they also refer to it as a honors warrant. Yeah. Now, section 3, paragraph 2, clearly states that, look, it is the president, incumbent president, that can give an honor in person, no, to a person, to a recipient in person. To that extent, he's right. Now, Femi Falana and co, who argue that there's nothing wrong with it, he too is right because he referred to paragraph 3, which says that the president has the right to nominate another person. All right.
No. Section 3, subsection 2 says the president, subsection 3 says the president can vary what is in section
along
3.
Yes, along a particular direction.
Where the legal argument is the definition of in person.
A person.
You know, and some people relying on stare decisis, on precedents, on what the law says. Extant law. I've tried to define what in person means. You know, and that's why it's on the basis of that you will find the Senator Dino Melaye acting as a lawyer, you know, a bathroom lawyer, in my view.
Can I refer to your statement that Justice Belgore also made? Yeah. He said the only exception is in the case of military men, that the president can give honor posthumously. So then there I asked the question, we are talking of a president-elect. So,
no, because what Mr. Belgore is referencing is not in the National Honors Act. It's in the, I believe, the National Security Act that actually mentions posthumous awards.
No, it's in the National Honors Act.
Okay.
But the National Honors Act has other warrants,
right,
dealing with the police, dealing with the fire service, dealing with the military, you know, and under those categories.
There's none that deals with president-elect.
No, don't trivialize it.
It's not truthful.
Do not
it's
trivialize
not truthful.
The argument, you know, is about the interpretation of section 3, subsection 2, and section 3, subsection 3 of the National Honors Act.
Yes.
Okay, and if you look at the arguments on both sides, they sound very intelligent. Okay, and maybe somebody will take this to the courts and test, and then the courts can give a proper judicial interpretation. However, I want to go back to Yemi. There are other issues. There are people saying, for example, that Ambassador Babagana Kingibe does not deserve to be honored. That what has he done to be given a GCON? What do you think?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I woke up to this morning is the cover, I believe, of Tell. I had Mr. Kingibe on the cover saying why I dumped Abiola. And that's part of the narrative around the fact that he didn't work towards the actualization of the June 12 mandate. But I think quite simply what
And now it's actualized.
what President Buhari
by
had
that
done
time.
is that
Now
he
it's actualized.
honored, if I want to use that word, the ticket. So June 12 had a president-elect and had a vice president-elect for all intents and purposes.
Vice presidents can resign, you know.
I'm just saying that what the
No.
action is, yes. But Abiola went on to stand by the mandate, go to jail for the mandate. Baba Gana Kingigbe went on to do other things. But legally...
He served under Sani Abacha
as a minister.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
He was minister and...
So legally, politically legal and legally political, I think from a president's point of view, what he chose to do was honor the ticket.
Anyway, quickly, let's move on to the next topic. I'm sure we'll come back to this after the investiture ceremony
On the
on
12th.
June 12th.
Actually, the list of that is actually also a very interesting one that we didn't get to.
Okay,
The
quickly.
dynamics, not just the dynamics of the composition of the people who've been chosen to be honored. Names like, I think Admiral Kanu, for example, has been said, or
No, they are
General...
not giving those ones honor.
No, not honor, but
they've invited them
celebrated
to come
as-
and eat.
As part of June,
Come and
the
witness.
honor, no, let's be very
come
clear.
and
may well be
Witnessed but honored as part of people who fought for the June 12 mandate. That was the
Maybe
criteria
they
for
should be honored
invitation.
properly because there's a long list of people who made a lot of sacrifices.
But that's then the point then. What the composition, which was contested, was that it favored a particular part of the country in ignoring other parts of the country that were also part of the June 12 struggle.
Where there's always federal character.
Illegal.
No, there's always federal character in everything in Nigeria, you know.
But there are people...
There
but
are
it wasn't
persons
just
who have
as-
been saying, persons from the north, certain persons from the east. If you follow the federal character argument, then you have to honor the entire country.
And
But
Bashir
there
Tofa.
are key people that were part
Bashir
of
Tofa.
that struggle.
Anyway,
As
we'll
I
return to that.
should
Maybe
be
next
said.
week. Maybe next week after June 12.
The opponent.
Yeah, let's move on to the next subject. Friday, June 8th, marked 20 years since military dictator Sani Abacha died. On 17th November 1993, General Abacha overthrew the short-lived transitional government of Chief Ernest Shonekan. In September 1994, he issued a decree that places government above the jurisdiction of the courts, effectively giving him absolute power. 20 years after Abacha. Prof, let me start with you. There are some people who say, look, Abacha is a villain of democracy. There are some people who say he's a hero, and they say they are alarmed, shocked, disturbed that the president of Nigeria is even the one promoting Abacha. And it's one of the points against President Buhari to say, look, you can't be defending Abacha and you are saying you support June 12. Prof, contradiction?
There's no contradiction. All the perspectives are valid, depending on what you are considering. You look at some critical cases, yes, and Abacha will be a villain. But when you look at other critical issues too, you can even describe him as a saint. But the issue is that 20 years after Sani Abacha, really, we've not seen much change. All right?
Why would you consider him a saint?
For many reasons. For instance, in December 1993, he directed the military to go to the Bakassi, all right, to protect our territorial integrity, all right? From this perspective, he's very patriotic, all right? Without going to the details, I remember, for instance, he set up a committee chaired by Chief Richard Akinjide, and they looked at all these cases to say, look, at the end of the day, if you have a population of about 22,000 as at 1966, all right, in Penandopo, and 90% of whom were Nigerians. And we were looking at Nigeria either annexing or not annexing.
But Prof,
Well,
don't let
well,
us go too far. You know, the issue about Bakassi eventually went to the ICJ. Okay? And the eventual outcome, that matter was not resolved until under Jonathan.
But the issue was that Sani Abacha patriotically addressed the issue.
No, questions were raised about how, you know, that matter was also addressed. But Yemi, I see you are anti-Abacha. What are your views?
I mean, for the fact that he was a military dictator, a maximum ruler, to use your words. So I was just a bit struck when Prof used the word saint. So that's why I picked up on that.
Well, I mean, he's right in one regard. I mean, in Bayelsa State, for example, Abacha is considered a hero because it was under him that Bayelsa State was created.
Yeah.
So if you go to Bayelsa State, you say anything about him, nobody will listen to you.
There were 6 states.
Anyway, I'm listening to you.
Sainthood by state creation, noted. I'll remember that. No, but I think really in terms of the struggle for June 12th and the morphing into sort of an I mean, we've had military rule, but I think under Abacha, the fight for democracy and end to military rule in Nigeria really came to a head in people really saying that, look, no, this is enough. Now, and in the protest, I mean, in one day alone, 300 people, demonstrators were killed. So that in the context of statehood, I struggle. But really, I think having gone through Abacha and his mysterious death, and I think that was even noted, that he died mysteriously on that June 8th. But since we returned to democracy in 1999, I think even those who weren't born at that time, the clear departure from Nigeria from a military history, I think is something too that Abacha for me marks, that with the end of his regime, we've not looked back.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, we're already counting down to the end of the program. Yeah. So the important thing about the Abacha leadership is that Nigerian leaders, whatever they do, when they leave office, when they die, will be remembered by the people, and there will be proper accounting. Indeed. And that's why every leader should be mindful of the moral, you know, that when you lead well. Last week, 2 successful public figures, U.S. celebrity chef and television personality Anthony Bourdain, and iconic designer Kate Spade, were found dead in what was reported as a suicide. Their deaths by suicide have sparked a wave of conversations around mental health and the need for National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Now, it's not just in the US or in Europe or elsewhere. I mean, just yesterday or thereabouts, somebody, you know, jumped to his death in, I think, Mecca, in Saudi Arabia. You know, there's so much depression everywhere, even in Nigeria. Prof, what do you make of all this? Why would anybody want to kill himself or herself?
Well, we can ask the question, when you are running after a snake and the snake is running, and at the tail end, the snake is tired, it turns back to want to fight. Now, what is happening in the context of human beings? When you continue to live and you get to a point whereby your living is worth nothing according to you, and you now think that the best thing now to put an end to your suffering, then the next thing is to take your life. In this case, I want to believe that it is the culture of the more developed countries, all right, who do not attach importance to their life.
No, that's not true. A lot of people have committed suicide in Nigeria.
We do. What's their status? What's
no,
happening?
It's not about status. They are human beings.
I'm coming. I know they are human beings, but there are categories of human beings. I, for instance, if I want to die, all right, I don't want to die. I don't want ordinary Volkswagen to kill me. If it's big vehicle along, we will know. I want to die honorably.
Your point is that
the point is that
socioeconomic status determines who takes their lives?
No. You see, for instance, when you have problems, some people are heavily indebted. Some people have robbed, all right? And they need to die to cover up, all right?
Okay, let me go to Teriba. Prof says he doesn't want Volkswagen to kill him.
Yes, I must.
Will you prefer Mercedes-Benz or a BMW to kill?
You must die honorably.
I don't want a car to kill me, by the way. I would
That's
rather,
an example.
you know, die peacefully, you know, in my sleep when the time comes.
Okay.
Right. Well, cases of suicide, you know, is something that, you know, you received with shock and you wondered what we could have done to avert it, then perhaps we should reflect more on what to do, to discourage people from, resorting to
It's an individual decision.
terminating their things.
It's an individual
But
decision, but in the context...
no, I need you to address the issue pointedly. The issue about mental health,
Yes.
about depression, and the responsibility of the individual and of families. Because mental health should not be a stigma, that it is, particularly in Nigeria, and people should seek help.
Particularly, not even just Nigeria, on the continent, and
Yeah.
even in Western worlds, it's come. But I think the tone of the conversation, we need to see mental health and depression as an illness. It's the same way you say someone has diabetes, has a heart condition, has a liver condition, and so it's like saying that why would someone who has malaria have a temperature? It's a symptom. So anybody who has suicidal thoughts is a symptom of a fundamental health issue. And so, unfortunately, as a country, and all the reportage on Kate Spade and Nate has had helplines. So everybody who's tweeting about it is sharing a helpline. Please call if you need help. Please do this if you need help. Unfortunately, as a country, we don't have that. In Lagos State, I know, for example, they've been trying to work on a mental health policy, but Lagos, even as a state, doesn't have one. The country, if I'm not mistaken, also doesn't have one. So that's one thing we need to wake up to. And it's not just old people and socioeconomic status. We have young people in schools who are killing themselves. An 18-year-old 2 weeks ago took his life in his own house.
Is it mental health?
But the point is that just to clarify, the thought of taking your life, a permanent solution to a temporary problem, being your reality, shows that there's something wrong with what your sense of self is, and that is a mental health
in the context
problem.
of terrorism.
Yes.
For instance, people who believe that if they die, they go on suicide mission, they are going to heaven.
Is that mental health?
I think what we're going to do, we're going to invite an expert on this subject. Mental health, suicide, depression, bipolar condition, schizophrenia. They are not just issues we just talk about glibly. I would like to have an expert, later on this program, who will sit down and then comment as an expert on the issue, because it's a very serious issue. It's not something we joke about.
But the takeaway really is that mental health is a health issue. And it's not just, they are just mad, or they don't have any
you are very right.
So
Suicide is a health issue.
No, but it's a byproduct of mental health issue. Yeah, exactly.
I believe next week we'll be able to get...
categorize suicide into...
No, Prof, this is not about Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz.
Exactly.
It's a serious issue.
It is a very serious issue.
We need to go.
We should give it that level of
you
seriousness.
have terrorists
We need to go.
who go on suicide mission.
We need to go, Prof.
They kill themselves.
Don't worry. Let's leave the Volkswagen perspective.
okay.
You've been watching This Day Live, this Sunday talk show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From my entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.